Don't tell me you had this recording the whole time.
I just did right now. I recorded our tomato conversation. Welcome back to Can You Not? The three of us are back once again. I'm Joe. I do things like movies and stuff.
I'm Jesse. You've heard my voice about 30 episodes, so there's nothing else to introduce.
They might be a new listener. You don't know.
Okay, my name's Jesse. I'm lit and angry at all times.
My name is Amber. I'm all the things Jesse is, but on Twitter.
At AmBudJ. I did want to say real quick, I didn't catch this, but we did get, this is a while back actually, we did get one other response to our Indigenous People Climate Change episode.
Oh, God.
It was an agreement, though. It was not criticizing us out there.
Finally, I get someone. We get someone from that episode, man.
Healthy Green Building says, Indigenous knowledge was built on hundreds of generations of pure observation and is not influenced by corporate lobbyists. Many Indigenous people have seen climate change coming, while many politicians still deny it. So they just like agree with us pretty much.
Yeah, well, I mean, those are valid points that you may not have to address directly.
Man, that episode though, what a good call on my part.
A lot of feedback, yeah.
Yeah, boom.
The most feedback we've ever had in an episode.
Look at that. Flex.
But our theme for today, also please ignore if you hear bouncing basketballs. That's in the basement.
There's a pickup game going on in the laundry room.
The NBA championships are happening in the basement.
The And One Street Tour mixtape is happening downstairs. So make sure you bring your FUBU and Nike headbands.
We tried stomping on the floor and they still didn't stop.
I mean, here in Cleveland we are renowned for basketball now, so you can't really blame us for trying to... Whoa, showing off our pride?
What did they just break?
They did break the window once, like the window of the
that
door
didn't
was broken
sound
one
like...
time.
They throw it at the ceiling. Anyways, it does not matter.
God.
Anywho, the theme for today
is bomb shelter.
is problematic fave.
Explain what problematic fave is, Joe, so the audience has an idea of what it is.
A problematic fave is a term used for something or someone that you greatly admire. Perhaps it might be like an artist or it might be like a movie, but you start to realize that there's problems with it, and you can still enjoy these things, but you have to just acknowledge the fact that they also have things going on, too.
I think it's a fandom term.
Yeah.
I think, like, Severus Snape is the original problematic fave.
Right. I guess I can go first.
Nobody moved.
Since it was my topic that I came up with. Okay.
Let's let the white man go first.
Always. Well, unless he's holding a door, then he literally will not let me go through until... Or he will not go through until I go through.
And if I were standing at the door, you'd put $1 in my cup full of coffee.
Oh, God. All I'm saying, it's the cisgendered white man's time. I just feel like we've been
Every time
up,
is the cisgendered white man's time.
I feel like time and time again, we've just been pushed to the side from all these other people, and it's our time, so... I guess they agree. So, okay. I'm just gonna ignore that for now. So, it's Harry Potter's been in a bit of a revival lately. We've had a play come out, which was not written by J.K. Rowling, which has been either loved or loathed, depending on who you ask. There's a new movie coming out, which is Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them, which J.K. Rowling wrote the screenplay for. It's really sounds like it's going to be really awesome. But one of the other things that she was doing is, in preparation for this movie, which kind of develops in 1920s America, and she's kind of like showing people what the wizarding world was like in America. Well, this was about several months ago now, I think. She released a story about... It's called A History of Magic in North America. And people didn't like it too much. Because essentially what she did is she took some Native American stories and stuff and kind of like melded them into her supposed history of America. For example, she equates the skinwalkers, a Navajo term for people who turn into animals, with the animagi, which are the types of witches and wizards who turn into animals in the Harry Potter world. So she was kind of like using them and equating them. And she also had a story about like this witch who comes over from England, and she meets this, I think they're called Pukwudgies. Pukwudgie. And the Pukwudgie is another Native American, part of lore, particularly from the Pawtuxet tribe. People were very upset that she was utilizing cultures and melding them into her own stories. Do you think that this is as problematic as what everyone says, or do you think that she was genuinely like just trying to utilize other stories to create something that made sense within her world that she made up?
Did she do it with any other mythology besides Native American?
It was all different types of Native American.
Well, I know, but she?
Well, she didn't incorporate again like her own magical world.
But what I'm saying is she incorporated Native American mythology into her world. Did she use mythology from any of the other countries for her history of magic?
No, I don't think so.
Then I think it is problematic.
So this is strictly North American, so is it only focusing on the United States? Is it focusing on Canada as well?
It seems to be mostly stories from Native American and I think some Mexican tribes.
Okay. The other thing too is if she was intelligent enough, which I think she is, she should have included lots of black magic, Afro, Creole stories from Louisiana, Alabama, Mississippi. Those are North American and they include magic as well.
True.
That's true.
There's a lot of other magic from other different diverse peoples of the United States, but I think the thing that is really terrifying about her using Native American stories is that we've seen so many people take these stories and folklore and use them for profit. And these tribes have just been decimated culture-wise, and we're still imperialistic to them.
Right.
And this is from J.K. Rowling, who's from Scotland. So, like, that's wild to even think, like, more white Eurocentric people are imperialistic than just white Americans. Even Latin Americans to an extent, and Black Americans, because we're not woke about things sometimes. Like, we don't question the Cleveland Indians. We don't question the Atlanta Braves. Like, we don't question these things.
Sure.
So, like, I do think what she did there was problematic, yeah.
And, like, because the reason I asked that is because, like, one of my favorite books is American Gods by Neil Gaiman, and he uses he just uses the mythology and he weaves a story out of it. But I think that part of the reason why people might not be as... Well, I haven't seen an outcry about it. People seem to like that story a lot. Is because he seems very well researched while he's talking about it, and he doesn't pick one. Like he appears to try, and he takes ideas from Africa. He takes ideas from the United States. He takes more like mythological, like traditional mythological, like Zeus and that kind of thing into it. But I feel like just focusing on one feels like, to me, it feels more like she had this idea. She's like, I want to weave mythology into a thing. And then she just kind of dove in without doing, I don't know. I guess I don't know if she's done the research, but it does feel like just kind of an idea that was rushed through. And I don't know, focusing on one group, I understand them taking issue with that because it's their culture, you know, it's those are their stories.
National Geographic did an article on it, and they have a quote from Leanne Howe, who is of the Choctaw Nation. She wrote a book called Seeing Red, Hollywood's Pixeled Skins. And she says, I would never use the term magic in relation to Native practices and beliefs. We are fighting every day for the protection of our... Oh, this is a different scholar. I apologize for this part. We are fighting every day for the protection of our sacred sites from being destroyed. If indigenous spirituality becomes conflated with fantasy, quote-unquote, magic, how can we expect lawmakers and the public to be allies in the protection of these spaces? That's an interesting argument, too. It's not just that she borrowed from something that wasn't hers. She's... By just using the term magic over all or equating it to a fantasy story, she's taking something that's a very innately held deep belief with a group of people and saying, and it's just fantasy or whatever, and having people not take it seriously, I guess.
Because that also reminds me, one time I just picked a book up out of the library. It was a series. And the whole idea behind the book was this girl, and it was a young adult, it was garbage, but it was this girl, met this kid who was pagan, specifically Wiccan. Mm-hmm. And it was like, oh, this could be kind of a cool story. But then it turned pagan and Wiccan from, like, a spiritual belief into, like, they could actually throw fireballs. Like, it really just, it was kind of a caricature, this really ridiculous, like, X-Men caricature of Wicca, because that's not what it's about. Like, and I feel like there's just really dangerous to start going into things like that with that fantasy thing in mind. Like you were saying, like, we have so many depictions of Native Americans as these like Pocahontas style humans who believe in these crazy mythologies that, you know, we all think are wrong. And like, if we, like you said, if we paint this picture of magic and all this stuff that these people don't actually believe in, I feel like it really illegitimizes a lot of what they stand for.
The other thing too is they're 1% of our population now. Like they're not existing in our population anymore, and it's so tragic. And we're fictionalizing what they have left. Their practices of medicine, like the things that settlers learned from. Yeah. So like we're fictionalizing their practices, their customs, their beliefs, and we're making them imaginary when they very do exist. So like it's tragic, it's sad.
Do you think, bouncing off what you were talking about, Amber, does that mean then that she was appropriating Wiccan culture to begin with the original Harry Potter stories in a way? Do you think that's a whole separate thing?
Well, I meant a different book.
Oh, I realize, but I'm saying, like, but given, you know, you were talking about Wiccan and
well, I don't think
that, do you think that she was?
I don't know the history of the words or like the wands and like where that whole paradigm came from, but the books I read literally said this person's a pagan. They were doing pagan rituals. We went to a pagan store. These were, and they described like things that are actually in like those kinds of rituals and like the stones and the candles and all that stuff. Yeah. But and then they took it and turned it into this crazy, fantastical, like satanic thing, like with magic and stuff everywhere. J.K. Rowling doesn't. I don't think Witches and Wizards is appropriating that, and it might have been at one point, but I don't think it is anymore. Because it seems so separate. Like I don't know.
It's because that history is so much more ancient, is much more.
Well, but she never said pagan. She didn't say Wiccan.
Right.
But she said she's using Native American mythology, and this other book that I read said they were Wiccan. Like they're literally saying this is what we're using, and then turning it into this other thing that it's not.
This is where doing the most is hurting the most. Like I have nothing else to say about it. So I was having a problem deciding on who I wanted to talk about for problematic faves.
I'm excited.
So I wanted to start out with one that maybe both of you would know, and that's Robert Downey Jr. Actor who was in Chaplin. I think that was one of his most notable roles.
Iron Man?
And Iron Man as well.
Iron Man,
yeah. So those two films he has the most notoriety for. So he did blackface in Tropic Thunder and got a nomination for Best Supporting Actor in 2009. He has been arrested numerous times for drug problems. He's also supported Mel Gibson in his anti-Semitic tirade. And he's also done Yellowface and Sherlock Holmes 2. And he also goes on to talk about... Oh yeah, he was the only one that clapped at Seth MacFarlane's joke at the Oscars about Chris Brown beating up Rihanna. And he joked about calling the next Sherlock Holmes movie Sherlock Holmes a game of titties.
That's actually kind of funny.
That's somewhat funny.
It's so dumb.
It's so dumb, but like he has gotten so many passes.
So really quick though, for the Sherlock Holmes Yellowface thing, I feel like I would skip over that one because that was I think it was supposed to be a costume and it was supposed to be stupid, and it was a costume within the movie. It wasn't the movie itself. So I would.
No, I get that.
I would
The
pass on
costume,
that.
the costume to me is problematic in a sense, but
I don't think that's his fault.
That's not his fault.
Yeah.
But accepting a role like that,
That's ridiculous.
that's not okay.
No.
At all.
I forgot about that. I wanted to forget about that.
I didn't know that happened.
And I've seen Tropic Thunder too, and it was so hard for me to watch the whole thing. So hard for me to watch the whole thing.
So stupid.
So-
He's such an unusual. Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
I was gonna say he was an unusual success story in that like 90s he was like kind of like there, like he kind of made it big, and then he basically got into drug problems and alcohol and completely crashed, and somehow out of the blue he gets the Iron Man call, which regardless of his problematicness was fantastic casting. I mean, really brilliant in the long run. But man, and ever since then he's been A-list out, you know, like A-list of A-list since then. And it's crazy to think that this dude who probably didn't really deserve a second chance kind of got a second chance and ran with it.
And he's done nothing to prove that he's
Remorseful for it.
anything.
Yeah.
Anything.
He just kind of keeps going on.
But he's so damn good. Like, I've only watched one Iron Man, and I was like, yeah, I'm kind of into this.
Mm-hmm.
He did a movie with Jamie Foxx, if you remember.
Mm-hmm.
Jamie Foxx was homeless, of course. What else would you give a black man, right? Homeless celloist or something. Do you remember that movie?
Yeah.
That was also great acting by Robert Downey Jr.
Yeah, actually, I don't know. I like Robert Downey Jr. I really like his Sherlock. I'm bored of Iron Man because I've seen it too many times, but I like Iron Man and stuff.
But see, that's why it's a problematic fave.
Yeah.
Do you see?
Yeah,
like, definition.
Yeah. Well, that kind of, the yellow face thing kind of reminded me, like, we're doing a show at school that involves an Asian woman, and it's very specifically casted, like she's a Japanese woman, like there has to be a Japanese woman. And we were talking about it in my class, and the guy who's my teacher is like, we're gonna have some, I don't know how we're gonna do this, because like we have like 2 Asian women in the department, and like neither of them want to audition. So he's trying to figure out how he did it, and somebody said, well, I've seen a production of this show, and like the woman who played this character came off afterwards, and they were talking to them, and she like wiped her makeup off, and she was not Asian. But that was because there was nobody else to play the role. So I guess that becomes like, what do you do if you want to do this show? Like, you know what I mean? Like it gets so bad.
I think you run into that problem a lot with comedy, because like at what point are you satirizing the issue, and at what point are you helping to create the issue?
Yeah.
And I don't know. Like, I think a really controversial movie that's very relevant with the passing of Gene Wilder is Blazing Saddles.
Oh God, that's such a great movie, but so bad at the same time.
I've never seen
It's so good,
so
bad.
good, so bad.
It's a Mel Brooks movie, and it stars Gene Wilder and why is his name?
I cannot think of his name.
Comedy legend.
Richard Pryor?
Richard Pryor, yeah. And there's just so many jokes that, like, I think I take the side that the movie is, you know, like taking the piss on racism. But certain people, you know, it's still very, like, questionable and stuff like that. Like there's a scene where they're trying to figure out how to sneak into this group of, like, sheriffs or whatever. And so it's Gene Wilder's character and Richard Pryor's character, like, how are we going to do this when you're black or whatever? So they see a couple guys standing over there, and they have KKK outfits on. And he goes, I have a plan. So he goes up, and he's like, guys, look what I got. And he pulls Richard Pryor, and Richard Pryor just stands there and goes, where are the white women at? And they come running over, and they beat him up, and they take their costumes. But it's one of those, like, on-the-line things, like, it's kind of questionable, but
It has truths to it, and it has some tragic flaws that make it truthful.
Yeah. And the other problem, too, especially with that kind of borderline satire, is as soon as you create something and let it out, you don't have any control over what... So people could be laughing at it because they are racist, or people could be laughing at it because they think it's funny because it's making fun of racism. So it's just kind of like, you can argue about it, but...
And like with this role, it was just, there was no...
You mean the Robert Downey Jr.?
Yes, with the Robert Downey Jr. Tropic Thunder role. There was no, like...
There's no satire.
There was no satire. He was trying to be a black man.
When did the movie come out?
2008.
What? We're doing blackface in 2008?
Yep.
That's not okay.
And then the other one, I don't know if you're familiar with him. Donald Glover.
Anybody. It's a Childish Gambino.
Childish Gambino.
I've heard of Childish
Okay.
Gambino.
So his earlier lyrics to some of his songs are very misogynistic. Like very misogynistic. And then some stand-up comedy he did, he did this equivalence of comparing HIV/AIDS to having kids out of like not knowing you're having kids and saying that they're stuck with you for the rest of your life. And then he's also done viral videos in 2006 and 2007 called Bro Rape. So, and it's on the borderline where you don't know if he's making fun of homophobia or he's actually being very homophobic.
Right.
And it's also like, there's also this element of self-hating too. Like, comparing himself to a college white boy, like the frat character.
Yeah.
So there's all that going on, and that's what made everyone so interested in Donald Glover. Because he went viral during MySpace. I remember this. Like, he was huge. But he has a lot of things that are just very problematic. Ooh, if I can go back. But, yeah, I'd much rather have AIDS than a baby. They're not that different. You guys, they're both expensive. You have them for the rest of your life. They're constant reminders of the mistakes you've made. And once you have them, you pretty much can only date other people who have them.
That's really bad, but I still think it's funny.
It's hard to say though, like where...
It's funny to us because we didn't live during the AIDS crisis.
Right.
Well, yeah. I don't
We
know.
had, like, people dying on state capitol stairs. Like, I don't find that funny at all. I understand the humor to it, but then my conscience comes into effect, and I know not to laugh at that.
But we've talked about what's on and off limits for comedians before. Like, you know, it's such a hard line to walk.
Yeah.
And especially once you get into, like, not to be that guy, but once you get into the freedom of speech thing, like, it gets hard to even criticize people or, like, ask them what your intention was or any of that stuff. So.
And then he talks about rape culture, and he's like, there's a quote here, he's like, I guess for a dude, it's never going to be totally awful. You can't really get raped unless it's by a dude. If a girl forces sex on you, it's like, yeah, it was awful, but I had sex. I wasn't in the mood, but I was hard.
Yeah.
I don't
Do you see what I mean? Like,
yeah.
he talks about rape a lot, and it's very,
Yeah, it's not.
So, but the problem is his story writing within his albums and his TV shows and like his little shorts is so good.
No, this is really
And he just dropped a new HBO series called Atlanta, and it looks so good, and I want to watch it. But he is a problematic fave. Like, he, by definition,
who would have thought?
is a problematic fave, and so upsetting.
It reminds me a little bit. I think this leans more on the side of spinning it. But Louis C.K. I think does this a lot.
He's on the list on this website too.
Like, I remember he did this SNL opening they tried to pull it off because it was like so, like the audience was not having it. I'm sorry, I'm a little bit over time. I was going to finish this anecdote. But, okay, so the basic idea is he goes up and he's like, man, there sure are a lot of pedophiles out there. And he's like, it's got to be pretty good for them if they keep doing it. It's like how we eat chocolate cake, apparently. Like, for them, it's got to be amazing. Like, or else they wouldn't do it at all or something. And it was kind of like, it's, again, like, weird in the line. Because you get that he's trying to spin it and, like, realize that they're people while also making fun of them. But at the same time, it's also pedophilia. So it's like, people don't know what to think. People don't know what to... It's really, really, like... It's tough. It's
no, Louis C.K. Yeah. You and your sexist behavior too.
Yeah, he's had some weird supposed behavior, but God, is he a genius? And I love his show. So
Hasn't he made women watch him masturbate?
Yeah,
that's to get a role.
That's supposedly
on Louis. No, that's creepy.
That's disgusting.
Exactly.
Yeah, absolutely.
I don't see. He is not even a fave anymore in my book. After I heard that, I'm like, I do not care how funny he is. I am not supporting that man anymore. Yeah. And now, like, I go further into the well of Donald Glover, aka Childish Gambino, and now I'm like, why?
Why do people suck?
Why do you suck so bad? Why are you misogynistic?
People look up to supposed to be perfect.
Why are you homophobic?
Why are you human?
Did you two ever used to keep a diary or journal when you were
I still keep a journal.
Do you? Do you have difficulty keeping up with it though? Like, or is it sometimes like, I don't want to get it out. I don't want to write anything in it today.
I forget sometimes.
Well, you wouldn't forget if you got Day One Journal. You can install it on your Mac or your iPad or your iPod or iPhone, and it just goes at the top of the page. And it reminds you, it sets up daily reminders so that you don't forget. One thing I don't think I've mentioned about Day One before, though, is that you can sync it between your multiple Apple devices. So once you have it on one device, it can show up on any of them. Another cool thing I don't think I've ever mentioned is that you can keep multiple journals, actually. So you can have, your one journal just talk about your day-to-day things, and have one journal maybe talking about your work life, and just kind of keeping track of that kind of thing. That's something that I have to do at work. But yeah, if you go to day1app.com, you can get it. You can go on the App Store and get it. I highly recommend it. I think you'll love it. It's called Day One Journal. Check it out.
I don't know humans. So I didn't pick one. I picked a concept instead that I've noticed is a thing. So I wanted to talk about that applies to a bunch of different groups of people, but I am specifically thinking about LGBTQ. Is the difference between visibility and using it to sell something. So as a character, there are a list of character traits. This also applies to mental illness. There are a lot of things that use this. And humans, there are races, there are mental disorders, obviously, there's sexuality, there's gender differences, and there are all kinds of things, but as these things become more acceptable, I feel like they also become fetishized in media as characters and as humans, and I feel like a lot of times if you take a character and you make the character gay, the story then has to be about them being gay, or if you have, and this one's been happening forever, if you have a fully black cast, the show or the movie has to be about them being black. It can't be a story that happens to have black characters. It has to be about slavery. You know what I mean? Yeah. So
if you want to win an Academy Award.
Right, yeah. So I wanted to talk about what differentiates making something visible and realizing that humans come in all these different spectrums and placing a character in one of these spectrums versus using that to try and sell something because it's popular right now, or because you think being gay makes you more deep, or what I mean. But do you understand? Yeah. So that's what I wanted to talk about.
So to start off, those that are visible in the media that are LGBT are exclusively Caucasian for the most part. So that's a problem within itself. Yeah. So they're selling the idea that it's okay to be gay because they're white, but they don't explore the intersectionality of being, a person of color who's also woman, lesbian. They don't explore that. So there's multiple dimensions to this. It's a really hard conversation to have because it's like, for me, I love pro wrestling, if both of you didn't know.
Weird.
Interesting, right? And the WWE just talked about this, that they are getting help from GLAAD and other LGBT corporations, organizations, groups' efforts to sensitize the writers and teach them an authenticity to creating an LGBT character. And that's never really been done in great care on the main roster. So on one hand, it would be awesome to see that on Monday Night Raw or SmackDown, see an LGBT character have a belt or just be in the ring, period. But on the other hand, it's like the reason why you're doing this now is because it's a societal shift. So are you trying to make money off of it? You're going to get both, I feel. It's so hard. You're going to get both if you want to move forward.
And really quick, I want to interject really fast. I didn't quite explain how this applied. So I think it's good. So the faith part is that I think it's good that we're getting visibility. We can't just have the same cisgender white people playing the same characters over and over again. That's not representative of humanity. The problematic part is the fetishization of these traits that people have. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but I didn't mention
No. Actually, that works entirely off of what I was going to say. It's kind of sad that so much societal acceptance comes from corporations and other, capitalistic entities embracing that stuff. It's like how, Oreo would have never came out for like gay rights back in the 90s. But in 2014 or whatever, they feel safe enough that they can put it on their social media and stuff like that. And it's like, it is sad that sometimes that stuff is what pushes people to be more accepting of it too. But until you start seeing, major LGBT characters in films that, and that's,
that they aren't dying.
Yeah, that aren't automatically dying, And I think what will be a huge shift is when there's an action or sci-fi movie where the main character is LGBT.
Well,
and because you see it in indie movies, you're starting to see it in romance movies, you see it in...
And you see it on television.
Oh, yeah. But can you think of an action hero who's LGBT? I can't think of one. Or if they do, it's like a very small character, or they were announced as LGBT like years later due to like societal pressure, I guess,
And I feel like it can be hard for writers because this is obviously part of who they are. If you have depression, then you don't exist separate from your depression. If you're black, you don't exist separate from your blackness. So you need to write the character not separate from who they are. But I think what would be really pivotal is if we had major films about these people that doesn't ignore who they are, but also the whole story doesn't have to revolve around it.
Yeah.
What I'm really thinking about with this is a fully black cast in a movie that's not about slavery or just about racism. There are other things that these people do besides battle racism. There are other things that occurred. I'm not saying that isn't a huge part of these humans' lives, because it is. Then you can't get away from that, and you're never going to. And if you try to, that's wrong too. But
you know who does a great job at that? Shonda Rhimes.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
With How to Get Away with Murder, right? And then also Scandal. And even to an extent with Grey's Anatomy, there's people of color in that, and there's a lesbian character as well. Yeah. And she does such a great job in character development and showcasing that these are very important elements to who they are and to why they react to certain things within the storylines. Yeah. But it's not exclusively driven off of these two dimensions of their characters. Yeah. She does such a great job at it.
I will say, even in her shows and in other shows that feature a lot of LGBT characters that actually tend to do it, I do think sometimes it is back to the fetishes, and a little bit. The characters who are maybe their plot line isn't just that, but when it is them, they're like the sexy, deviant, at least that's what I've seen a lot. In a lot of TV shows, when they feature a gay character, they're usually the super I'll be with any dude or I'll be with any girl or whatever. They just are sexual fiends, and it seems a little, I don't know. Again, I feel like that's just exacerbating the issue.
Yeah. And there are humans who are like that, so I don't think that those. No. I'm not saying you're wrong, but I do feel like it's a problem because then you turn it into another stereotype. Yeah. And just listing off shows, Orange Is the New Black, I think, does a very good job at this. And also, I'm not going to spoil the third season, but BoJack Horseman also handles a character very, very well in that regard, where you take a character and you give them this trait, but it's the whole arc isn't about that trait, but you also don't just turn it into a checklist on your list of quirks for your unique snowflake character, you know what I mean? Because I think that's a problem. The unique snowflake thing happens a lot with mental illness. It happens a lot with mental illness. So if you have a boring character, you give them anxiety and depression, and suddenly you have something better than what it was. And I feel like, I don't know if that happens so much in mainstream media, but I do see that mentioned a lot in terms of original writing.
Even to agree, I think I mentioned before in this show that I'm a big fan of the artist Elliott Smith, and he committed suicide in 2004, and he suffered a lot of depression, particularly this later half of his life. But there was a film that came out, I think a year or two ago. It was a documentary about him, and it was called Heaven Loves You. And the documentary didn't focus on him as the suicidal, depressing person. They focused on who he was as an artist and who he was to his friends and the music that he made. And some people really enjoyed that, but I saw all these bitchy reviews that were like, wow, he was so much more deep and depressing. Why wasn't the movie about that? Like, why did you make it all about, like, it was so light compared to what you could have dug into. It was supposed to be about this, this dark, depressing character, but it's like, that person wasn't just that. That was a part of who he was, but that's not all that person was.
I was just thinking of, like, fetishizing a marginalized or minority character, right? Or just someone in entertainment. And I was thinking of Jimi Hendrix. So, like, legendary, right? Legendary rock star, but because he's fetishized as being, like, the only black rock star, we don't have black rock stars. And I feel like there's not lanes for black rock musicians as much because we fetishize Jimi Hendrix.
Yeah.
And I didn't think about this till the other day, but that just came to me because I was thinking about it prior. I was having a discussion with someone about it, actually. It's wild to think about, but yeah. So, on one hand, we have these characters and figures, and it's a big deal, but yeah, it's kind of problematic how it can be commoditized or get in the way of other things. I don't know.
Man, we had 3 very hefty topics. We probably could have gotten double for most of these topics today. If you want to check out more of our topics, you can check us out on soundcloud.com/CYN podcast. You can find us on iTunes under Can You Not, under the podcast section. Email us at canyounotpodcast@gmail.com if you have any ideas of things you want to talk about or any feedback. We have a Facebook.com/Can You Not Podcast, I believe.
Yeah.
Twitter.com/CYNPLZ. And if you look on the App Store, and there's all kinds of different podcasting apps that you can download. I've looked through a lot of them, and we show up on quite a few of them. So I don't know, try downloading one and see if we're on there. But we'd love if you would subscribe to us. What did we learn today? I'll start since I'm up first. I always forget. I remember this time. I learned it's one thing to utilize inspiration from a culture, but if you are swapping out that culture to implant your own story on top, I feel like that's much more of a gray line. You should heed that very carefully if you're going to do that.
I learned Robert Downey Jr. is problematic, and I learned that Donald Glover would like to have AIDS instead of children.
I learned that people are complex and writing characters is hard.
This is true.
I'm really excited for somebody to get mad at me for saying the word problematic because I'm a millennial. I'm super amped for that to happen.
Amber got into one of her classic Twitter battles.
4.
Several.
4 at once.
Of her Twitter.
I had like 10 fists.
She just kept swinging.
It was magical. It was on the hashtag famous millennial quotes. Hashtag. Yeah.
By the way, we have our first anniversary coming up, and we may have a special surprise planned for that, so stay tuned.
Also, if you own a business that sells people food or drinks in Cleveland and you want to have us there, you should totally hit us up.
Yeah, we're going to be playing some more live shows in the future.
We'll be playing something.
Yeah. And people who don't own those things, can you not? That was bad.
Can you not?
That was pretty bad.
Can you change your pair of socks?
Can the basketball stars downstairs not?
I'm done. We're playing basketball.